Armada Book 1 Chapter 1, Slanders Part 3. Welcome Alan, guys, have a seat. So these are the guys you're hanging out with. Gentlemen, please make yourselves comfortable. We'll wait for the ambassador. How are the staff treating you and your party? Alan asked. Pretty good. You have a fine ship here, Alan. It's our home away from home. Alan, did you know that the Endeavour was the ship Captain James Cook used to explore the Pacific? This ship was named USS Endeavour by the Max. Is this a spooky coincidence, or the Max are a good student of history? He looked at Ellie. Let me give you all a head start, I'm sure the ambassador won't mind. She then proceeded to tell her Makiri stories and how they evolved into what the Max fear today. After 30 or so minutes she's almost done. Gilkin walks in. Ambassador Gilkin, it's good to see you. Please have a seat. Gadden pulled his chair and gave it to the ambassador. Ambassador Gilkin, what do you know about the Makiris? Rivers asked. Gilkin was taken by surprise. He stood up in the front of the group and started. Around 500,000 years ago, a certain Maccabee leader wanted to create an army that could defend the planets. His team was able to develop an elongated tissue implant starting near the pituitary gland up to the pineal, and another one attached to the liver and pancreas that actually made the Max more aggressive, made them more muscular and strong and 2 feet taller, at least. But these Max eventually lost the connection to the collective and over time their offsprings, became less and less intelligent than the regular Max. They later exhibited some psychosis and absence of empathy. Several generations of their offsprings were no different from the parents who had the same psychosis and absence of empathy. Over time, in several thousand generations, the psychosis and absence of empathy grew, and with it, aggression. At one point in the planet which did the research, the Makiris rebelled, and since they were trained and armed, they overwhelmed their Mac and Maccabee leaders easily. There was a mass exodus out of the planet, and over a long period of time no Mac and Maccabee was left. Gilkin showed some unease and hesitation after his long discussion. Gadden stood up and, Ambassador Gilkin, I can take over. Please take a rest. He offered a chair for Gilkin to sit. The saving grace, and you can give the credit to the researchers, is that the implant they created had a flaw that reacts to the transport platform's way of cloaking or placing the target personnel out of regular phase before wrapping them in 2 time bubbles and then a third and then sending them to the other receiving TP. If these Makiris transport, their implants get burned out and they lose motor control, suffer excessive headaches, loss of sleep, excessive hot flashes for the men, and over time they lose their height and muscle mass. They learned this early, so they stay away from TPs and cloaking technologies. However, over time they developed interplanetary travel. Though slow, they were able to take over several planets in several solar systems in the galaxy where Max were. Over time, the Max who chose not to leave the planets they took over learned to live with them and developed a trading relationship. Technology for protection. Their whole industrial base was on the backs of Max who simply wanted to survive. You have to give it to these Makiris. They have not executed a Mac in hundreds of years. Andrew cuts in, so these Makiris, how are they organized? The Makri, as the general may call them, have a ruling council, and the planets are governed by a planet council, and the council head is a member of the ruling council in the home planet where they started. About 500 years ago a Makri general staged a coup and installed himself king, but largely leaving the council and government structure unchanged. The king made sure the Max were left alone, although putting pressure on them to develop technologies. I think the present king is the son of the first king who died more than 100 years ago. Rivers looked at Gadden. Do they pose a threat to our existence? Gilkin stood up and motioned Gadden. I have visited one of 8 Makiri planets, and while the Max are assured survival, they do not survive well enough. They are pushed around, they get very little food, and they basically work for them to survive. So while the Max know a lot of advanced technologies, they do not reveal these to the Makri. The Max have been successful in delaying their technology to a level that is similar to Earth's before our contact, but their interplanetary ships are capable enough for intergalaxial travel. Their armies are huge, almost half of their 10 billion or so population is in the military. So the answer is no, not yet, but yes in the future when we bump into them like we did in the planet below. Their weapons are standard laser guns. They do not have carbon-based weapons like you have on Earth. Their warships carry pretty common laser cannons, not like our photon torpedoes and cannons. While our warfare technologies continue to develop much faster than the Makiris, they are high on aggression and can overwhelm in numbers. They also have interplanetary fleets, and this was the cause of the mass exodus of the Max out of the galaxy. Gadden said. So Gadden, if they are allergic to cloaking, we can just plant a cloaking generator and all the Makiri in the area would be neutralized? Ellie asked. Yes, you see the Max know this, but as you can see we cannot do this on our own. So in the meantime there is no threat. But just the same, Alan, please send out teams of Macs to gather intel. And if new intel said otherwise, then we can take action. Rivers concluded. Ellie stood up holding her tablet. My science staff tells me that the Macquarie were on this planet about 400 years ago and left several thousand Slanders. This means that before the Slanders, the Macs were inhabiting the planet, and when the Macquarie came with the Slanders they left after they saw the Slanders rule the planet. It seems by the time the Macquarie left, the Slanders were already ruling the planet for the Macquarie. Andrew looked at her. So it is possible that they will return? And judging from the size of the Tripscat, and the fact that the planet has a sizable diamond crystal deposits, then you can say that they may be here but not soon. I believe the intel gathering must be done in haste just the same. Alan said. Alan, we would be leaving tonight for Hedad, but keep me updated on this. With that he left the room. Gadden escorted the ambassador to his quarters. Nissel, Keelmill, assemble several teams to infiltrate the Macquarie planets. Make sure you get the best for this mission. Tell them to cloak at all times unless they are blending with the population. This is just an intel gathering mission. Tell them, no risky behaviors. Alan said. Good job, Ellie. Andrew said. Thank you, sir. Whoa, did I hear sir there? Tony asked. Ellie just smiled at Tony and headed for the door. Major Rivers, ma'am, Nicole said as she was waiting at the door and greeted Ellie as Ellie walked out. Yes, Dr. Burns. Ma'am, based on our interviews with the older Mac refugees, the Slanders talk of a planet they call Batter, and the only description we gather is that it has 2 moons and a lot of diamond crystals. Also, it would seem that the Macquarie may be using the diamond mainly as a power source and in some of the smaller lasers. Based on Gifka's research from the collective, the planet is in a galaxy 120 MLY from here. It's about 80 MLY from planet Portland. This is what it may look like right now. It does have a TP, but we do not know if it is operational. Gifka is still looking into this. Gifka said there are no Macs on the planet. Nicole shows her tablet to Ellie. Nicole continued, it is 30% larger than Earth and has 70% land area. Water is available, but the planet ice caps cover 30% of the land area. The diamonds seem to be under the ice. The air is breathable but thin like you're in the Arctic region. Vegetation is primarily concentrated in the middle of the planet. Ask Nissel to send a Mac and Marine Intel team immediately. Yes, ma'am. Major Rivers, here is our report on the photon torpedoes and how we can make the range longer. It was Dr. Cameron Tan. The issue is simply, we need a larger diamond power pack. Now if we lower the plasma shielding of the photon torpedoes we would use less power. Let's just do with the more power and in fact increase the plasma length so it could penetrate the target further in. Yes, Major. I'll tell engineering to rig our existing torpedoes this way. Cameron said and left. Dr. Ramesh, I need you to come out with a remote cloaking device that we can deliver via our regular rockets or by TP with a large enough power pack or self-propelled system and strong enough to cloak a ship as large as the USS Endeavour. Ellie said. Dr. Ronnie Ramesh acknowledged Ellie and, Major, it will not be hard because the Macs have prior research on this area. The next day. Can we talk to the General? Andrew asked the receptionist for General Rivers. Alan was walking towards him. Andrew, Alan, come in, what's up? Rivers stood and met Andrew and Alan midway in the room. Andrew sat and said, Timmy, we need more ships. Alan just got some indication of the size of the Macquarie Armada. 800 large starships not counting the attack ships. These buggers may not be smart but their numbers may overwhelm us. We also need to devise defense action plans in case of attack. But our production capacities are dependent on the Macs. The support industries for building starships on a large scale can be developed but it will take time. And the fact that production redundancies must be developed in all the planets. This issue will take at least 20 years to resolve. What Andrew is saying is that Earth is overdue. Look at us. We are so far advanced it's not even funny. Go back to Earth and you're back in some third world country. Maybe it's time to get the whole Earth on the same page. Alan said. Okay guys, I may be privy to a lot of things, the president is making plans but I don't know how he intends to play it out. The solution to our problem must start somewhere. Maybe you can nudge him a little. Andrew said. What if it blows up on his face? I would have my ass to blame. For your info, there are moves being undertaken in Washington in preparation for the big event. Timmy said. Stop thinking like a politician and start thinking like a general. Time may not be on our side. Andrew countered. Fine, I'll take both of your positions under advisement. I'll also try to send in more troops. It seems we will have a breakthrough with the German and Japanese. The English and French have just signed the armistice. What numbers are we talking about? Remember, these troops still need retraining. Alan said. Maybe a 200,000 to 300,000 tops. If we're lucky, the UK and France will send this much people off-world. Everything is fluid right now and we know what you need. Remember, I get intel from the Mac Council as well. Timmy said. We also need smart people, Ellie said, walking into the room. Rivers stood to kiss his daughter. Look, Ellie, the military is easy to gag, but you get a nutcase smart-ass scientist and we could blow our cover. Dad, this is a list of around 2,980 people who the Macs believe are not security risks but are smart enough to understand the new technologies in our database. I have another list of seconds or assistants to some of these people, here. She gives the list to her dad. Dad, take this guy from the University of Delhi or this one girl from the University of Tokyo. These two may develop the next generation plasma rockets. We have all this information and technology and very few people to absorb it and put it to use. We simply need to ramp up our game. There is a war brewing in the horizon and we only have this ship. Okay, Peach, I'll work on it. When, Dad? The complete list with their info was emailed to you earlier. I promise within 2 months they will start coming on board. Actually, Ellie, we have 3 ships, the USS Constitution and the USS Enterprise. But you're right, we do not even have enough people to man the 2 starships. Andrew said. USS Enterprise, sir, you're joking, right? Ellie looked at him. Actually no, but if they get a captain named Kirk, that will be a joke. I know we have 3 ships, sir, but not their names, and I know a Captain Kirk in the Navy, but he is on Earth. Ellie said. Okay, smartass, what you did not know is that Gadden told me that he is assigning most of the able-bodied Mac refugees in the Starship production in Hedad and in Planet Seattle. You know the Macs are always thinking ahead. Andrew said. I know that, Gifka told me that. But they need Earthlings to help them. Okay, I believe I understand the real situation now. Timmy said. Okay, Timmy, just always have in mind that we don't have much time. Andrew said. So Daddy, you're leaving in 2 hours? Yes, and with that Rivers held her hand and walked her out the door to her room. Alan looked at Andrew. I guess we're dismissed. A month later, near Planet Portland. ETA Planet Portland 4 hours, the ship comm blared. It was the voice of Captain Diane Norman. Captain Franks, maintain cloaked position when you jump down from warp space please. Mitch Horner reminded. Captain George Franks, Roger Colonel. Franks beams a subdued smile, being the first Earthling to pilot a U.S. starship. It's been a long way from his destroyer days. Norman, sound battle positions before you jump from warp space. Full shields and arms ready. Franks said. Captain Diane Norman was an Air Force fighter pilot and the starship seems big to her but easier to control. An hour before arriving at Portland, the ship sound warning system blared. Ellie wakes up and thought, that sounds like battle stations, I better get dressed. Andrew arrives at the bridge, the noise woke me up. What's up? Alan looked at him and answered, glad to see you up and early, Andrew. We'll be in Planet Portland in less than an hour. GX1 team walks into the bridge with Ellie, walking in with 2 scientists in tow. I want to test the plasma torpedoes on the planet immediately, Dr. Tan, and I want to deploy the cloak on a plane below to test the remote control system, Dr. Ramesh. Ellie said. Dr. Tan and Dr. Ramesh both nodded, turned and walked briskly away. Slowing down from warp space. Battle stations. Planet Portland ahead. Norman said. Suddenly, Andrew can see a planet ahead. Captain Franks, scan shows a ship at the far side of the planet. Visual in 1 minute. Norman said. Seems like we're not alone. Do they see us? Franks asked. The ship is a Macquarie Starship Dalpa type, a forward scout ship. I do not think they see us. Gifka said. A schematic of the Dalpa-class starship is shown in one of the side screens. It's about 1/10 of our size. She continued. What does the scan show? Alan asked. All Macquarie crew, normally about 120 strong including the pilots. One area shows Slanders, I estimate to be around 60. Numax. The ship is carrying 60 small space fighters called Menti attack ships and some transport vessels. Bendil said. Mitch, assemble GX teams in the TP room please. Alan said. Andrew, take GX3 and GX5. This is a recon mission. You will be under the ship's cloak program so you will remain cloaked at all times. See what they're up to. Andrew, I want to get that ship intact so we can study it. He continued. Understood. Andrew said. Dr. Ramesh is providing us with these remote-controlled cloaking discs. We will implant 3 of these in the ship so we can cloak it remotely. We'll see how the cloak affects the Macquaries. Ellie said as she gave 2 of the discs to Captain Bott and Captain Riel. We may also need some tagging pens just in case we want to beam out the Slanders. Andrew said. I want to add a Mac team complement of 5 to each team to do more intel work. They will beam separately but near your drop area. Alan said. Okay, General Mann, you will be beamed near the bridge, General Logan near the engine room and General Jeffrey near the hangar. General Mann, your team first. Here goes. Mitch said, and with that he started beaming the teams. Can they hear us, Rivers? Andrew looked at Ellie, whispering. No sir, they can neither see nor hear us and none of the sensors can detect us. But remember, we have some mass although very small so we can still bump into them like a feather. Try to stay clear. The team nodded and walked near the main opening of the bridge. There seems to be a flurry of activity with one Macquarie shouting orders and another one telling the shouting Macquarie something. They are monitoring the planet Earth settlements. Look at the screens to the left. Gadden said. The Mac team arrived and they are going over the electronics of the ship. They will try to disable the communication system of the ship. Gadden continued. Tell them to look for the longer-range communication systems and disable those first. Roger, call Tim and Rick to have their Mac teams work on disabling the long-range communication systems first. Andrew said. Got it, boss. Roger said and proceeded to call the other GX team leaders. The other team members stood at safe areas and observed the activity in the bridge. Andrew, they're wondering how the Earthlings came over. They're planning to send a ground crew of mostly Slanders and send off some fighters. Gadden said. Are they planning an attack? Andrew asked. Not clear yet. But they are talking about the planet's defense batteries and how it was focused on this ship, but they are not sure. Gadden answered. Sir, I've stuck the cloaking device at the back of this console. Eric said. Jeffrey's voice came in and, Andrew, we found the main long-range communication system and plugged a C4. Awaiting your order. Good Tim. We need to coordinate how we can take over this ship without alerting their command. Andrew, the Macs are pointing to a communications hub and disabling it will stop all ship communications. We will blow it to disable it on your order. Logan said. Roger, Rick. Roger looked at Andrew. Sir, 2 of our Mac teams found the armory and locked themselves inside. No one can get into the armory. The rest of the Macs are still looking for targets. Eric said. The fighters are prepping. Gadden commented. Tim, where are you now? We're on our way to the hangar. I've ordered the Macs to tag the fighters. Good, we may need to stop the fighters from getting off. Alan, we're ready to get these Macquaries on your order. Okay Andrew, we've warned the settlements below. In a few moments we'll decloak behind the ship and I will give them a warning. Once we decloak, blow up their long-range comm, go someplace to recloak and prepare to engage on my order. Alan broadcasted to the teams. Okay team, let's go and hide. Andrew said. Andrew, the captain just gave the order to bombard the settlements with laser blasts on his command. But I believe he wants to launch the fighters first. After a few minutes. Alan, we're ready. Andrew said. General Alan, we're waiting for your order. Jeffrey said. Just say the word General. Logan said. Getting ready to beam in several Marine strike teams under Captain Jackson near where Macquaries not in your area are. Alan, they're scrambling into their fighters. Jeffrey said. General Cook, communications broadcast from their captain said he gave the order to launch. Gadden said. Just then Alan decloaked the Endeavour and the Macquarie heard a soft thud. Just then all Macquarie communications went dead. Alan appeared as a hologram in the front side of the bridge. You are in our planetary space, we know you have plans to fire at our settlements. Prepare to be boarded and surrender your ship. The hologram said in Macquarie. Andrew's team has cloaked again and has already positioned themselves in the bridge. The Macquarie captain gave an order and a Macquarie fires several large laser blasts at the ship. But it simply spread outward along the ship's shield. All strike force teams on the ship, stand by. Cloaking the ship. Alan announced. Suddenly the ship was cloaked and Andrew saw the Macquaries cry out due to a sharp pain in their heads, shook like an epileptic shock and fell on the floor. In about 20 seconds the ship was uncloaked. Earlier, GX-1 found the bridge Macquarie crew on the floor while still cloaked trying to stand. 3 Macquaries were able to draw their weapons and tried to shoot at where they saw the cloaked team earlier. Just then the team uncloaked and began firing at the shooters. Then 2 more fired at them but missed Roger. Roger hit both of them hard with his weapon. The captain made a lunge at Ellie and Ellie was quick to cut him down. Andrew and Eric shot at 2 shooters from the back and brought them down. In less than a minute the bridge firefight was over. 3 Macquaries lay in pain but otherwise unharmed. Lie down and spread your hands. Roger approached one and tied both of his hands behind his back with plastic grips. Then he moved to the other while Eric tied the hands of the other Macquarie. Alan, the bridge is secure. Andrew said and to Eric, tag them and beam them to the brig. Mitch, are you there? Yes General, beaming the prisoners to the brig. All the Slanders have been neutralized and all the fighters are now uncloaked. It seems the Macquarie fighter pilots are in great pain. Jeffrey said. All Macquaries in our area are dead except for 2. Mitch, we have 2 Macquarie prisoners for transfer to the brig. Logan said. General Cook, all Macquarie in our areas have been neutralized. Jackson said over the comm. Our scan shows some Macquarie in several quarters, MCOM sending coordinates now. Alan said. After 30 minutes, Mitch announced our scan shows all Macquarie are accounted for. A few minutes after, the Macquarie ship was filled with hundreds of Endeavour personnel. Good job, teams. General Jeffrey, please take command of the ship. GX-1 and GX-3 to the mission room. Captain Jackson, deploy more men to secure all areas of the ship. Wait for Nissel to finish installing the heavy-duty TP at the hangar. Alan said. Dr. Fernandez walked in and, General Cook, all these Macquarie are almost vegetables. Some of them can't even talk, or stand, or sit. The transport really did them in. Now at the mission room, GX-1 and GX-3, good job again. Good coordination. Alan said. I heard the prisoners are useless? Andrew looked at Alan. This is the reason why the Macquarie do not use TPs. Andrew, all is not lost though. Gadden said. Keelmill and Malcolm held the heads of the Macquarie and attempted to read their minds. Initially, they were taken aback by the pain the Macquaries were feeling, but once they got over it they saw they can get information from the prisoners. We can read their minds. Gadden said. That's good news. Andrew said. Alan, our Mac teams were able to hack into the communications hub while waiting and we got some pretty disturbing communications. Logan said. Rebecca Bott walked in. General Cook, it seems that the Macquarie leadership got wind of the Mac's activities with our people a year ago and have assessed that we posed a threat to their plans to spread further into the galaxy even if they are several billion light-years away. It appears that they sent out robot probes to look for Earth life in their area of the galaxy and found none. Further out the probes found this planet and this ship, which was one of the longest-range scout ships they have, was dispatched. Their primary mission was to gather intel, test the enemy capabilities and send info back to the Macquarie leadership. From the captain's actions, they assessed the settlement could not fight back if bombed from orbit. I guess, that's testing. And it would seem they were ready to test the Slanders against the settlers. Andrew said. I just got word from General Jeffrey that the ship sent out an emergency beacon when the long-range communication system was disabled. Ellie said. Alan asked, Tim, can you fly that ship? We can fly this anywhere you want. Jeffrey answered. Good, start heading to the Columbia Void and park yourself within TP range from the nearest possible viable planet. Bring a TP team to install long-range TPs along the route as jump-off points. We may need to blow up the ship far from here. Once parked, blow the ship up and transport yourselves back to Portland. Cloak the TP along your route when you leave for the next TP, unload all the Mentis or space fighters to the planet below right before you leave. Got it, General. The crew will take a few hours to work the ship getting anything they can. After they finish I can leave. Mila set a course to the Void. What would be our ETA? Sir, if we leave after 3 hours we will reach the area in 20 days. We'll rig a plasma bomb so the ship will be pulverized. Mila said. 20 days? Isn't that kinda slow? Jeffrey asked. General, this ship does not travel cloaked so its warp speed is much slower. If I may, it would seem that the Macs who built this ship built it with a lot of defects. For example, the engines were designed only to work at 60% capacity, which is highly irregular. Also, the power source is not matched with the ship's peak demand without redundancy. Technologically, this ship we have is much older by several hundred years compared to the Endeavour. Garkin said. Sir, we need to make 4 orbital flyover to send TP teams down to viable exoplanets. Mila Bond said. Did you hear that, Alan? We invaded an old galleon ship. Next time we try to take over a ship, let's not risk our Porsche to win a Model T. Andrew said. Okay, laugh all you want about it. But if they have several hundreds of these and we only have 3 Endeavours, we may lose our Porsches. Alan said. I'm getting hungry, come on team to the mess hall. Andrew said.